Hello everybody, I hope you're having a great day today. Today we're taking a look at Robert and Charrette's Wolves on the Border, which was published in the late 80s and then republished again in the early 90s in the Rock series, which is where I got my publication from it. In the more than 100 plus novels in the Battletech series, this is a fan favorite. It regularly tops or gets the top of pools of many people's favorite novels. When I read it when I was a kid in high school for the first time, it didn't really stick with me, but going back and rereading it again, as somebody who's now 45, this definitely has something more to it to offer, and I definitely am enjoying it more. So I'm probably going to be giving this a 7 plus out of 10. So like 7.3 or 7.4 that I'm rounding down to a 7 rather than just a normal 7 out of 10. It's definitely got a lot of fun stuff happening in it. In the 31st century of the Battletech world, there are 5 different successor states that are vying for control of who can be the sort of the one to take up the mantle of the Lost Star League. It was around for about 300 years. It fell in the 28th century. And then it was around for about 300 years or so. It was really a sort of a highlight of American expansion in the future when we were expanding massively and finding and settling thousands of systems, but not finding any other intelligent life, which I like. And we were taking our own issues with us. And so this is a time of brilliance and love and appreciation. Unfortunately, due to the Ameris coup and a civil war that followed, it left, and there were 5 states that are now vying in the successor wars for this, and we're now in the successor war level, a few hundred years of successor wars where things have becoming increasingly lost, and there's now technology from the Star League era that's now lost to people, and so that's now where we're adventuring, and I enjoy the sort of military science fiction genre of this. So now we're taking place in the Draconis Combine, which up till this novel its role was typically one of an antagonist. Like, for example, in the first novel ever published, Decision of Thunder Rift by William H. Keefe Jr., it's set in the Illyrian Commonwealth, but the Draconis Combine are seen as are the antagonists, and particularly one person named Duke Pasivrakul is the mastermind behind it all. So he's the primary antagonist of the story. In the second novel, that was published by William H. Keefe Jr. and in this series that goes again more than 100 novels long. Again, the antagonists work for the Draconis Combine. It's set on Draconis Combine world. And as we follow along with this mercenary regiment called the Great Death League, which will eventually become one of our greatest mercenary units in the inner sphere, the central area of the galaxy. So there you are. So that's sort of what happened. But starting in Wolves of the Border, the Draconis Combine by Robert and Charrette. And it's the first novel that we're reviewing for you for this channel. He begins to take a deeper dive into the Draconis Combine. It has protagonists. It's set entirely within it, except for a couple of scenes outside of it. And there are protagonists and antagonists in it. It deepens the culture. The materialism is much less so. It's definitely a lot of more things that are happening. It's definitely more fleshed out. And this is, I think, one of the reasons why. And now the Draconis Combine is definitely a faction that a lot of people really enjoy. There's a lot of Japanese mythology and legends and culture in this novel and in the Combine, the Draconis Combine, where this is set in one of the successor states. And so this is basically telling the part of the biggest mercenary unit in the inner sphere, the Wolves Dragoons, while they're fighting for the Draconis Combine for their 5-year installment. So this tells the epic story of what's happening. Their friends, their enemies, their military campaigns, and their planning, their strategies, their betrayals over the course of 5 years, and then an attempt to annihilate them from existence that they'll fight against. So that's sort of the core sort of story that's happening in this novel, Wolves on the Border. There's a lot of political intrigue in this, and like Michael Stackpole, this feels much more like a political intrigue novel than it does a military science fiction novel. There are battles in here, and I do think his battle scenes are better than Michael Stackpole, who we just took a look at for 3 books, another 3 books that were early on. This was published between book 2 and book 3 of that trilogy. And it was published initially by the company that publishes Battletech, called FASA, and then Rock took over FASA, and so it was definitely something that he knocked out then later on. This is 410 novels, 410 novels long. That's a long epic. This is 410 pages long, and I knocked it out in 4 days. I did 100 pages a day, except for the last day I did 110. And I knocked it out in 4 days, and definitely enjoyed it. I probably spent about 3 hours a day reading it, so it's about 12-hour read all told, and I definitely enjoyed this novel. And so next is going to be Heir to the Dragon, which is also by Robert N. Charrette. It's the next novel that he writes in the series, in the Battletech series. It also takes place and does a deep dive into Draconis Combine with Draconis Combine's antagonists and protagonists. And we're following along with the heir to the Charrette throne, Theodore Charrette, and his life, and all of his battles and his struggles, and all the people that are trying to work against him and so forth, and all the allies that are trying to support him, the heir to the throne. And so, and again, it'll do a deep dive into Draconis Combine. It was, again, published by FASA first. So as you can see, in one day, reading it last night for the first time, you can see how much of this novel I've already read so far. So we'll probably be knocking that out probably in another couple of days. It's actually less, so some of the same characters are in it, and while it's set in the same area and written by the same author, it's not the same. I wouldn't say that Heir to the Dragon is a sequel to the beloved Wolves on the Border. But it's definitely a fun thing, and that'll be next in our saga that we're doing. I definitely have been going back into a lot of things that I read when I was in grade school, junior high, high school, and college, but I've not gone back and read since then, so I've only read them once. For example, I went back and read the Dragonlance stuff, which I hadn't read for decades. I went back and reread, and we've reviewed a bunch of novels for those. I reread The Lords of Dusk quadrilogy by Hugo Award winner Lawrence Watt Evans. I read stuff that I hadn't read since I was a kid. I reread Fred Saberhagen's The Complete Book of Swords trilogy from the mid-'80s. I went back and read Terry Brooks's 3 books in his starting at Wizard, Magic Kingdom for Sale, sold that trilogy. And so I've gone back and looked at a lot of these sorts of things, and I really enjoyed going back and rereading these things for the first time as an adult, and getting sort of a new, fresh perspective on them. And I started reading Battletech novels in 10th grade, and I picked these up and read them pretty quickly. So we'll definitely take a look at it. Robert N. Charrette is a big name in the gaming and art industry. He did a bunch of miniatures. He's definitely an artist who did a lot of miniatures. He's also done some gaming designs in the gaming industry. He's also written a lot of fan favorite stuff in several different genres. He wrote in the Shadowrun universe too, which I haven't really done a deep dive into. And he's actually in one of the Hall of Fames for the gaming design. So he's definitely somebody who's a big name out there, and he has sculpted. He's probably best known in the Battletech world outside of his novels for his sculpting. He's sculpted tons of novels in the Battletech universe. Battletech has war games, role-playing games, video games. It's got a Saturday morning cartoon. It's got a collectible card game by the big name in that field, Wizards of the Coast. It's got just so much different things out there that you can interact with it from the fiction that's got more than 100 novels in it. So it's got a lot of different things out there to interact with based on what your own level of involvement is. And Battletech, the war game, is my favorite game of all time. So that's pretty cool too. So I definitely something I took a deep dive into and definitely enjoy. So there you are. I'll go ahead and leave you to it. Have you read Wolves on the Border by Robin and Charrette? If so, what'd you think of it? Did you agree or disagree with my 7+ out of 10? Did you think it's higher, like maybe an 8 or 9, like a traditional fan favorite would be? Did you think it was a little bit less, like maybe a 6 out of 10? Or just you agreed with me. I don't have do a spoiler deep dive, so we didn't talk about the spoilers. I just give you the basic sort of story structure and then moved on. But if you want to talk about spoilers in the comments below, hey, let's do it. Just put spoiler tags on it. And then finally, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video. We all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.